I was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. I was born in Ashton, Kansas on July 24th, 1897. When I was a child, I always loved jumping over fences. In school, I loved to read. Later, as I grew up, I became a volunteer nurse at Spadina Military Hospital. As an adult, I took flying lessons from Netta Snoop. In 1908, before I became a pilot, I saw my first airplane at the Iowa State Fair. In 1919, I returned from the United States and attended Columbia University for 1 semester. In 1920, my parents in LA, California met Sam Chapman and went on their first airplane ride. In 1921, I set women's attitude by flying 14,000 feet in the air. Going back to my childhood, when I was 7, I went on my first airplane. And when I was 3, I was living with my grandparents. In 1937, traveling east to west, I sadly crashed headed for takeoff, and nobody ever found me on Hemland Island again.
Hello, I'm Harry Houdini, the famous skateboarder. I was born in 1874 in Budapest, Hungary. I moved to America with my family when I was 4 years old. We were very poor, so I ran away to find work and eventually became a messenger boy. Soon after that, on one cold December morning, I put my hand on the ground with a note saying, "Christmas is coming, turkeys are fat, please put a coat on the messenger boy's hat." People were very generous, and I hid the coins all around my body. I went home and told my mother, "Shake me, I'm magic," and when she did, coins would scatter all over the floor. When I was 14, I wanted a job called the assistant cutter boy. I knew I wouldn't stand a chance if I had to wait in line that long, so I went up and took the sign from the window telling them, "Sorry, the job's taken." As soon as they went, I went in and got the job. I was also very fascinated by magic, and whenever I had a minute spare, I practiced it. The first trick I mastered was the dissipating and reappearing coin trick. Soon after that, I was great with magic, but I was getting more interested in locks. So I learned to pick any lock you can imagine. Eventually, I became the most famous magician and skateboarder in the world. Even though my act was very dangerous, I didn't die. That's not how I died. I died in 1926 from a ruptured appendix when a college student punched me in the stomach.
Hello, my name is Saka Juwea. I travel with Lewis and Clark on the expedition. I was born in 1787 in what now is Idaho. When I was a child, I had many different names. One of them was Bird Woman. I also got taken by another tribe. When I turned 16, I was forced to marry to St. Charbonneau, and this is how the adventure all began. Lewis and Clark were looking for men, but to get up the mountains, they would need horses, so I came with them because my tribe used to live by the mountains. During the trip, I got to see my older brother again when he was chief, and I got to see this giant whale, and I had a baby also. After the trip, I had a baby named Lizzie. Sadly, I died in 1812 in South Dakota by a high fever.
Hello, my name is Florence Nightingale. I am famous for becoming one of the first women doctors and going to the Sermon War. I was born on May 12, 1820 in the Italian city of Florence. My parents wanted me to be named after my birthplace, so they named me Florence Nightingale. Like most girls my age, I didn't go to school. Instead, my father taught me foreign languages, history, and math. My childhood was happy. As I grew older, my parents thought I should find a rich young man and settle down as a wife and mother. This is what girls my age were expected to do. Later, I realized I wanted to nurse the sick. Most nurses were often undedicated old women. My parents wouldn't allow me to be a nurse. I read books and reports about health in hospitals, and soon I became an expert on ways to keep people healthy and make them better when they became sick. I was sure that I wanted to be a nurse. When I was 26, I went to Germany with some friends and visited a nursing school in Kaiserswerth. I decided this is where I wanted to study. In 1851, my parents let me go to Kaiserswerth to study there. Then I went to Paris, France to become a nurse. Later, I went to work as a nurse for a hospital for sick women in London. In 1854, I heard about the bad conditions for soldiers that were injured in the German War between Britain and Russia. I knew I had to help. So I gathered a group of supplies and a group of nurses. We traveled to Scutari hospitals because most of the injured soldiers were sent there. The men had no beds and unhealthy food. They were happy to have better food and cleaner wards when we were there. They called me the lady with the lamp because I walked around every night comforting patients with the lamp. When the war ended in 1860, I became famous. Even Queen Victoria wanted to meet me. Yeah. In 1860, I set up a school for nurses in London. I became very sick and spent most of my time at home, but people still came for my advice about health and hospitals. I died in 1910 on August 13th.
Hello, I am George Washington, best known as being the first president of the United States of America. When I was a child, I lost my father at age 11. Fortunately, my older brother Lawrence raised me to become a proper gentleman. Later, as I grew up, I started to work as a surveyor. I mapped new lands. As an adult, I joined and became a leader with the Virginia militia. I served in the French and Indian War. After the war, I met and married Martha and became a large landowner. Soon I became upset with unfair treatment by the British rulers. This caused the American Revolutionary War. I was the general known for leading the Continental Army in victory over the British in the American Revolutionary War. I was the only president unanimously elected. Dun, dun, da, 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 dun, da, dun, da, da.
Hello, I am Michelangelo the artist. I was born on March 6, 1475, Caprice, in a village. My mother died when I was 6. I attended school at age 10. At age 13, I decided to be an artist. In 1488, I started an apprenticeship in Ghirlandaio's workshop. I left after a year to devote my energies and to be a sculptor. Lorenzo de Medici took me to his home and studied about the sculpting of the classical statues. 2 years later, I moved to Rome. I was 21. I painted the Sistine Chapel and sculpted the Pieta. I tried to make Julius II for several decades. I'm considered the greatest living artist in the history of the Renaissance times. I am a simple Catholic man. I am solitary and I am shy. My paintings, sculptures, and architectures are the most famous in the world. I died on February 18, 1564, at age 88, Rome, Italy.
Hi, I'm Amelia Earhart. I am famous for being the first woman to fly solo around the world. I was born in Atchison, Kansas on July 24, 1897. When I was a child, I moved around so much that day I promised that when I was an adult, I will never stay in one place for a long time. In school, I went to Columbia University, but I didn't graduate because after a while, I visited my sister in Canada, but then I wanted to be a nurse. While I grew up, I enrolled for a first aid course to be a nurse, but then I wanted to be a pilot. While I was an adult, I heard of a woman pilot who can give flying lessons. And in 1920, I became a student pilot. After that, I did air shows and air stints on my very own plane. A man called Amy Guest was looking for a woman pilot to cross the Atlantic Ocean and back. And then he heard of me and convinced me to do the flights. I also had a crew of men with me. When I packed my things, I packed a thermos of tomato juice, fancy clothes, and an emergency kit. After my last flight, nobody has seen me since, and the mystery will continue from that day on to encourage women everywhere to follow their dreams and destinies.
Hello, I am Betsy Ross. I salute the American flag. I was born on January 1st, 1752 in Philadelphia. I attended Quaker meetings to worship on Sundays and Thursdays. In school, I went to Quaker school. One of the men I married was John died in 1870. As an adult, I met George Washington and secretly made clothes for the American troops. My real name was Elizabeth Baby Betsy Ross. I also married 3 times and we also had 6 kids. In Quaker school, I worked very hard to sew better and make better clothes. Later as I grew up, I read the Quaker Book of Discipline. Sadly, I died on January 30th, 1836 at the age of 84.
Hello, I'm Harry Houdini. I'm famous for magic and escaping locks and safes. I was born in Budapest, Hungary, March 24th, 1874. As a child, I was a messenger boy. In school, I learned magic. As an adult, I became a magician and had my own show. But sadly, on one afternoon of October 22nd, 1926, I was looking through a mail and one of the students named J. Jordan Whitehead asked, "Can I punch you?" And I said, "Okay." 2 days later, I died. I died in room 401 at Bette Ruiz Hospital, age 52. They buried me in Mitchell Cemetery. Thank you.
Hello, my name is King Tut Tut. Come in. No one knows who I am until a guy named Howard Carter spent years searching for my tomb. Until in 1922 he found it. He spread it all over the country, so everyone started calling me King Tut for short. I died very young. I was 18 or 19 years old. The reason why it is resumed a mystery. I married the Pharaoh's daughter. By the time my father died, I became famous with clothes, furniture and musical instruments. My clothes and crowns were symbol, and those stuff weren't powerful because I was just a kid. And soon after my death, Howard Carter spread Howard Carter kept my stuff when he first found it, and I was a prince when I was born, and until my father died, no one knew who my family was.
Hi, I'm Abraham Lincoln. I was born on February 12th. I'm better known for being the 16th President of the United States of America and freeing the slaves. When I was young, I helped my father a lot, played with my little sister Sarah, but I mostly watched people go by. One day, sickness came to Hickman Creek. It was called milk sick. Many people died from it, including my mom. I got stepmom and she sent me to a school cabin called a Blab because everything sounded like blab, lab, lab. Years later, I went to different cities, but they all had slaves. I did not like this, so I ran for president twice and didn't win. I ran for senator, but lost to Douglas the Little Giant. He said Confederacy was right, and I said it was wrong. People were very happy with what I said, so they told me to run for president again. And this time, me, Douglas, and 2 other men ran, and this time I wanted to be the 16th President of the United States of America. One night later, I went to a party and met Mary Miss Todd. I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. We have 3 boys. Next, I wrote 7 years ago about Confederacy, and Confederacy did not like it, so North and South were at a war called the Civil War. It was a rough and dangerous battle, but the North managed to win. It took 2 years to end Confederacy, but sadly, before it ended, I was shot and brought back to Springfield. That is my story.
Hi, I'm Anne Frank. I was born on June 12, 1929. I am a Jewish Germany teenager. I was forced to hide from the Nazi Germany. Hi, I'm Anne Frank. I was born on June 12, 1929. I am a Jewish teenager who was forced to hide during the Holocaust. Me and my family were forced to hide from the Nazis' Germany. I disguised as a boy during the Civil War. Trying to remember. My memories gave you a high sight of the terrible conditions of the Nazi Germany were forced to endure.
Hi, my name is Wilbur Wright. I'm famous for inventing the first airplane. I was born on April 16, 1867 in Millville, Indiana. In 1878, my dad brought me and my brother a small toy Pinod helicopter. In school, I skipped classes because my experiments and hobbies got in the way of school. In 1889, my mother died. Also in 1889, my brother and I opened a newspaper called the West Side News. In 1892, we opened a bike shop. My brother and I are considered the fathers of modern aviation. I was president of the Wright Company. Our first successful airplane flight was in 1903, 1903 on December 17th in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Sadly, I died on May 30th, 1912 in Dayton, Ohio.
Hello there, I am Harriet Tubman, famous for leading many slaves to freedom. I was born in either 1820 or 1821 in Maryland. I'm not sure when it was because nobody thought the birth of a slave baby was worth remembering. As a child, I was sold to a family, the Cooks. Mrs. Cook was unkind to me. One day, I was sick and went back to the plantation. When I was 13 or 14, I stood in the way of my master trying to catch a slave. I got hit by a metal weight and had headaches and sleeping problems. As I grew up, I married John Tubman. I shared my dreams with him about escaping, but he said no, so I decided to escape on my own. After I helped myself escape, I decided to help others. I led all of my passengers through the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a group of homes and stores where runaway slaves would be saved on their way to freedom. I became the main conductor. When the Civil War started, I became a nurse and a spy for the Union Army. I married my second husband, Nelson Davis, in 1869, the year when my biography was published. Sadly, I caught pneumonia and died in 1913 in Auburn, New York.
Hello, I am John Lennon from the world-famous band, the Beatles, the first and greatest rock group ever. I was born on October 9, 1940 in Liverpool, England during World War II.
When I was a child, I got my first guitar from my mother, Julia, and she taught me how to play it. In school, I only did well in art class. I was smart, but I didn't work very hard, and I sometimes got into trouble. Later as I grew up, I became more serious about music. When I was 15, I heard rock and roll for the very first time. My favorite singer was Elvis Presley. He was the first real rock star. He slicked his hair back with grease and shook his hips when he sang. Many adults thought Elvis was a bad influence, but I admired him. Later, I formed my own band called the Quarrymen, but then we changed the name to the Beatles because our music had such a strong beat. Our manager, Brian Epstein, arranged us to come to the U.S. to sing on a TV show called The Ed Sullivan Show. That day, we made history. More than 73 million people watched, and we became even more famous.
We sold out.
We even made a hit movie called A Hard Day's Night. People started calling us the Fab Four, and Beatlemania had begun. Later, 6 years later, in April 1970, we made an announcement that stunned the whole world. The Beatles were breaking up. We had separate no.
My band and I. My band and I.
My band and I went on to have separate careers. My wife Yoko Ono and I held many protests against the Vietnam War. Sadly, on December 8, 1980, I was shot and killed by a stove fan. I was only 40 years old. My son Imagine was played over the loudspeakers at my funeral. I am remembered not only for being a Beatle, but for trying to make the world a better place.
Hello, my name is Orville Wright from Dayton, Ohio. When I was little, my father bought me a toy helicopter. I experimented with it a lot. One day I decided to take it apart. I made copies of it. In school, I skipped a lot of classes. I ended up dropping out of high school my senior year. My brother Wilbur and I opened up a bike shop. That's where we got all the money for buying the parts to the airplanes. When we got a little older, we made a flying machine called an airplane. One day during the experiment, the plane crashed and I got badly injured. Then I went back to bikes. Years later, I experimented more with my plane. Me and my brother built a new plane, and it was better. We flew it, and it passed. My brother died of It was 1903. My brother died of typhoid fever 9 years later in 1912. I lived to see planes circle the earth and people dream of flying to space. I died on January 30th, 1948, when I was 76 years old.
Hello, I'm Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States of America. I was born on February 12, 1809 in Hodgenville, Kentucky. When I was a child, I chopped wood, planted crops, and carried water. Also, I like to explore the woods. I didn't do that amazing in school. My mother sent me to school when she could. Later, as I grew up, I got a job at Taylor's Mill. In 1832, I ran for the Illinois State Legislature, but lost. As an adult, I married Mary Todd on November 4, 1842, and had 4 wonderful children. My children's names are William, Tad, Robert, and Edward. They're great children to have. I'm famous for stopping slavery and being the 16th President of the United States of America. I love what I do for life. I'm most famous for leading the country during the American Civil War. I pushed for the freedom for all slaves throughout the nation. Finally, the nation escaped from slavery. I died by getting shot in the head by John Wilkes Booth on April 15, 1865.
Hi, I'm Georgia O'Keefe. I'm famous for drawing and painting. I was born in Wisconsin on November 15, 1887 in the farmhouse. When I was a child, I lived in a farmhouse. I'd paint pictures of red and white flowers and stars. In school, I won the Chapman Art Prize of red and yellow corn for the yearbook. Later, as I grew up, I moved to New York. There, I became a member of the Art Students Language. As an adult, I married St. Liz and lived in a shack by Lake George. 3 years, more into my lifetime, 3 years after my husband died, I moved to New Mexico, and I enjoyed the peace and quietness for me to draw and paint the deserts, landscapes, and mountains. But my idea to create did not just mesh with my eyesight, and I lived at Ghost Ranch until 1986 when I moved to Santa Fe, where I sadly died in 1986 at the age of 98, knowing that someday other American girls like me will soon be encouraged to draw, paint, and become artists. Never give up your dreams.
Aloha, my name is Bethany Hamilton. I'm from Hawaii. I was born on February 8, 1990. When I was a child, 5 years old, I won first place in the Mehanuhe surfing contest. It was fun. That's funny. I also started surfing when I was 5. On October 31st, Halloween morning, as quick as a snap, a 14-foot tiger shark bit my left arm off. My family and I rushed to the hospital. I was totally fine. I didn't panic. Surprisingly, I was back in the water surfing 1 month later. A class of kids from Asia came to take a picture of me after what happened. As a professional athlete, I did my best to live a fit and healthy lifestyle. My latest project is a surf film called Surfs Like a Girl. I have 2 dogs named Hannah and Kabucha. They are Shar-Pei dogs. They are so cute. I married Adam Dirks in August 2013 and had my first son, who we named Tobias. No matter what, I will never ever give up my dreams.
I am Abraham Lincoln. I am famous for Langston's video all around North America. I also kept America from breaking apart in the Civil War. My name is Abraham Lincoln. I am famous for Langston's free all around North America. I also kept America from breaking apart. My mother said before my first and only day of school that I would learn to read and write. After my first day of school, my sister Sarah came home and she said I couldn't find ink. My mother and father started to freak out until someone knocked on the door and my father ran to the door. It was my teacher. She said Abe fell asleep in the classroom. I'll wake him up and take him home to you. When I was a little older, my grandfather met Indians. He helped the Indians do lots of things. One time when we were pulling weeds, Thomas stood up, but he didn't pull a single weed. Something terrible just happened. I saw my father fall. When I was 11 in a class of older children, I had to read and write a lot. After school, I had to do lots of chores and lots of other things. Some people say I was the greatest president that ever lived.
Hi, I'm Malcolm X. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. At age 6, my father died. At age 13, my mother went to a mental hospital and I became a member of the Nation of Islam. And at age 16, I went to prison for breaking and entering and I became an important leader of the Nation of Islam.
Hi, my name is Albert Einstein. I am famous for the theory of relativity. I am also famous for my invention of the atom bomb and the creation of the radiation to cure cancer. I was born on March 14, 1879 in Arnhem, Germany. I was an average student, but I loved science and math. In fact, I taught myself how to do calculus. I left school when I was 15 to move with my family to Switzerland. As a child, I loved to play the violin and piano. I played just about every day. I married Melissa Mitt in 1903. We later had 2 sons. I won a Nobel Prize in 1921 for my work in physics. Even though I am considered one of the greatest geniuses of the 20th century, I always showed respect and made time for anyone in any age that would visit me. Sadly, I died in April 18, 1955 in New Jersey.
Hello, my name is Albert Einstein. I was born in March 14th, 1879 in Ulm, Germany. I was famous for creating the atomic bomb, and my theories helped create it. I won the Nobel Prize for discovering the photoelectric effect. As a child, I played the violin and I wasn't too good. In school, I asked a lot of questions. I taught myself how to read about science. I started high school when I was 10 years old, and I was the smartest kid in my class. I published more than 300 papers about science. I died at the age of 76 and had worked until near the end of my life.
Hello, I'm Mary Todd Lincoln from Kentucky. I'm Abraham Lincoln's wife. I was born on December 16, 1818 in Kentucky. As a child, I made a dress out of willow sticks and white fabric. I was close to my dad and was interested in politics. Later, as I grew up, I was at a party and I met a young man named Abraham Lincoln. As an adult, I fell in love with Abraham Lincoln and married him on November 4th, 1842. I was famous for being Abraham Lincoln's wife. Abraham Lincoln was the 16th President of the United States of America. I was also famous for being the First Lady. Finally, I was famous for being thought of as a traitor to the North, but I was not. When I died because of grief. All of my family died before I died. I died because of all the grief from that. It was too strong that I died on July 6, 1882.